I wait for PG? This is one of the...
So you better, I'm your main chef.
Okay. Okay. So this is my new project here, which is the pumpkin growing trial. So it's about growing different pumpkins in different conditions to see if a variation in the pumpkins and in the conditions makes a difference. So the idea is to see what can more easily grow to make food that tastes good and is rich in nutrients that are good for our body and mind, which in turn helps people to make them more capable of contributing to their community physically, mentally, financially, and spiritually. So in terms of the rationale and significance of this project, this trial of growing pumpkins provides knowledge on which conditions result in a better and quicker harvest, as well as pumpkins that are of an appropriate size and taste for a simple meal that people can make when they have very limited resources. In addition, this project is aimed to identify pumpkins that can be stored for future use, which would address food insecurity during time periods where food is less accessible because of seasonality or lack of resources. The nutrients in the pumpkins may support healthy skin, eyes, immune system, and brain function. Therefore, they can help with improving health and nutrition for people and animals as part of a lifestyle, striving to be a better stewards of our body that God has blessed us with here on earth. So being able to grow and make their own food may provide meaningful, sustainable agricultural work for people to feed healthy food to their community with less cost due to travel or processed foods that are bought from stores or online, which in turn may reduce the carbon footprint by consuming less food that is packaged in plastic and paper, which would otherwise be disposed of in a landfill or some body of water. So tending to the pumpkins on a regular basis may improve physical health because people will need to stoop down to tend to them. So being outside in the sun and fresh air, sitting less, and being outside will allow them to be in the sun, absorb vitamin D on their skin, while they are also increasing their blood circulation and oxygen by moving their arms and squatting and bending to plant, maintain, and harvest the pumpkin plants. Since pumpkin plants grow to be 25 feet long, as you can see, they're not quite that long yet. They're getting there. So some people may not have space in their apartment to grow them. So they might grow them on a rooftop, or so if they're in an apartment building, on the rooftop of their apartment building, or at a community garden nearby. So growing in a shared space, then they would be doing it with their neighbors, and that may result in improved mental health by being more social and working with their community members to solve problems that they encounter while growing, and then rejoice together and, when they see progress and reap the benefits of their harvest. So in terms of literature, I found on the internet many sources. I checked at least 3 to make sure that there was somewhat consistency. So I actually ended up going with Seminole and Calabaza pumpkins because they were suggested by the Heart staff as being easy to grow in the subtropics. So I did research on those 2 cultivars. Some of the articles that I found came from the ecocommunity.org, University of Florida, IFAS Gardening Solutions, Reed Gardner, FloridaFruitGeek.com. But the most informative and comprehensive information for Seminole pumpkin was found at offbeatgardener.com, where they had an article entitled Seminole Pumpkin Growing Guide, which covered everything from when and how to plant and growing conditions, including a trellis and growing in containers instead of in the ground, as well as troubleshooting and harvesting. The Calabaza variety did not have as much information on the internet, but was found on the University of Florida website with somewhat similar information as the Seminole pumpkin in terms of growing guidelines. The vocabulary that was of interest has to do with the type of squash, so I'll come up here and show you. You can stay here.
I have to go.
So, as you can see, I have a green one, and this is not Calabaza or Seminole, but it's a regular standard pumpkin that you see in the stores. So the two types of squash generally are categorized as summer and winter squash. And so the summer squash is usually thin-skinned and is edible. So an example of that would be zucchini. And winter squash has a thicker skin and is not edible. The skin is not edible, like a butternut squash. So both Seminole and Calabaza are categorized as winter squash because when they are fully mature, their skin is really hard, like this, and not edible. And then, but if you get them when they're green, then the skin will be not as hard, and then you can cook them like zucchini. So as for methodology, there were 12 factors that I researched during the process, from sowing the seeds to tasting the fruit of different varieties of pumpkins. But as of December 13th, the first factor I was able to complete, and the second one is in process. And then due to the seeds were sown on October 5th, and there is decrease in sunlight as the year goes on. So just one of the plants started to spring over here, actually. You see on here that there's an actual fruit growing. So if you want to move down here and be able to see it.
We got one on the bucket. Is it still fruit?
This one, there was another one here, but it failed. It turned brown. I'm not sure what happened there. Maybe some ant damage. Let's see. So the seeds were not sown earlier due to the evolution of the student project. So at first my topic was going to be rainwater harvesting, and then when I saw the actual list of projects that the Hart staff was looking to have us consider, then I saw mushroom cultivation and thought I might do that because I really like mushrooms. And then there was also urban gardening, the urban garden, to revamp it. And so I really thought that would be more in line with my future goal of working in a community garden within a church or a tiny home community. But that project ended up being reserved for someone else. So I went back to the project list and looked at what else could be done in an urban setting to help people with growing and making their own food. And so after consulting the garden manager about growing pumpkins on the hill, she and the former caretaker of the hill helped me in narrowing down to the first and second tier that you see here of the front side of the hill. So the actual 12 things that I was looking to do as part of this project. One is the average days for seeds to sprout. Two is average days until the fruit starts to grow. And then the third one is average days until green, immature fruit is edible. So this is, I mean, I guess you could eat it, but it's so small, you know, I would rather get it a little bit bigger, like at least like baseball size. Fourth is size range of green edible fruit in diameter and length. 5, color of outside and inside of the green edible fruit. 6, texture of flesh inside of green edible fruit, cooked and uncooked. Taste of flesh inside of the green edible fruit, cooked and uncooked. Number 8, average days until mature fruit. So that meaning it's going to be a dusty orange color when it's mature. And they should be about 6 pounds and about that size at least. They can get up to like that big and more like 12 pounds. But it depends on the sunlight. The more sunlight you have, the bigger they can get. 9 is size range of the mature fruit in diameter and length. They don't always like are your traditional pumpkins. Sometimes they can grow like kind of long and almost like a watermelon. 10, color of the outside and inside of the mature fruit. 11, texture of flesh inside of the mature fruit, cooked and uncooked. And then the taste of the mature fruit, cooked and uncooked. So obviously, if I don't have fruit, I can't do those things. So the major activities, I wrote in a paper journal that I have right here. And so I noted when the seeds were sown and when they sprouted, but before any seeds could be sown, the area they were planted in had to be prepared and the seeds obtained. The seeds were obtained from the kitchen manager, who had harvested from Seminole and Calabaza pumpkins that he had processed earlier in the year. So therefore the seeds cost nothing, but the viability was unknown, the viability rate. So as for prepping the soil, so the area of tier 1, so I'm standing on tier 1 right now. This is about 30 feet by 8 feet. And so initially this was full of weeds that were about this tall. And so looking at it, I figured if I had to do it myself, it would take about 2 days because it was very hot and humid at that time. And I had other responsibilities to take care of, so it wasn't like, you know, I'm doing it all day. But with the help of 2 other students, Aaron and Ami, tier 1 was cleared in less than a day. And we were able to take those weeds and feed them to the chickens nearby, and whatever wasn't suitable for chickens, then we added to the compost bin. So the weeds, if you're wondering what they consisted of, there was a lot of things growing here. Some things are not technically weeds, depending on how you define weed. Weed is usually a plant that's growing where you don't want it. So everything that was here, I didn't want. So there was sweet potato and yam vine, Spanish needle, velvet bean, nutsedge, clumping grass, poinsettia, and lucena seedlings. Initially, some of the pumpkins were to be grown in seed trays while the planting area was being prepared. But when I did my research, it confirmed that pumpkins don't do well when they're transplanted. So I abandoned that idea. Tier 1 is for growing pumpkins in the ground, obviously, but with planting station method. So that means I didn't go through and turn this whole area like I would a garden bed. I just dug a hole and then put the fertilizer and compost in that hole before putting the seeds in. So with the post hole digger, I dug 6 holes here and 12 inches deep, and and just wide enough so that I could put a medium-sized tilapia fish at the bottom. So I took the tilapia fish from over here, and with the help of my advisor, we killed the tilapia by stepping on their head and crushing their brain so that they would stop moving and breathing quickly. And so put that at the bottom of the hole, and then put some pig bedding compost on top of that, and then mix that with the soil that had been dug out to form a mound. And then 3 seeds were put into the mound, about 1 inch deep. And then for the containers, you can see I have 4 containers up here. So after much contemplation and discussion with my advisor and the garden manager, the area of the containers went from being in the urban garden rooftop area to this tier right here, the tier 2 of the hill. So at first, the seeds were planted in these containers while they were in the urban garden area. And the sunlight over there in the afternoon is different because of the trees here. There's more shade in the afternoon where there's more sun over there. First the seeds were planted there, and then in terms of what I put in the buckets, so the buckets were obtained for free. They actually were ones that were in the animal shed feeding area. Because they have cracks, they are no longer of use. So rather than throwing it away, I use them because in my research it said that the pumpkins, the Seminole pumpkins, do very well in sandy soil that drains very well, and so that's what I did. I took sandy soil that was actually in the urban garden in empty pots that had no plants in it, and so then I took that, and instead of putting the fish, because I was told that raccoons might end up tipping over the buckets because they could smell the fish inside, so I just ended up putting the pig bedding and compost and mixed it with the sandy soil, and made mounds, and basically same thing, putting 3 seeds 1 inch deep into the mound. So after 6 weeks, according to research, the plants should be fertilized. And so what I did is I took the fish water from the fish tank and watered them once, but and then I continued with clear water. But I noticed that there were no flowers, and so then I did some research to figure out, okay, how do I encourage flowers to grow, and it said to increase the potassium and reduce the nitrogen. And I tried to see what was the potassium content of fish water, but the only thing I could find was about fish emulsion, but that is kind of totally different because it's basically the ground up carcass of the fish, and that's like way more stronger than just the fish water. So I just went ahead and experimented with doing the fish water for a week and seeing, and then after about a week, then I did start to see a flower appear. But I also noticed that after I added the leaf mulch, because there was, even though it got rid of a lot of the weeds, there were still, weeds popping up. And so I got the bags of leaf mulch and put that down. But there were ants in the bags, and I was hoping that the ants would just, make their little home and not bother the plants. But they ended up making little holes in the leaves, which then weakened the plants, and then caterpillars came. And so then I sought the advice from my advisor, and he suggested to do wood ash to make the ants go away, because they don't like wood ash. And then but then that's something that would like wash away every time it rained or if I watered over it. So another thing that I decided to do is put peanut butter in. I put peanut butter in these cardboard rolls, and you can see there's ants on here actually, to get them away from the plants. So I figured if I give them some other food, because I didn't want to kill them, and I also didn't want to put any more cost into the project, because I know that people who don't have a lot of money may not be able to buy borax or buy BT or buy any other kind of even organic insecticide. But I figure everybody has peanut butter, or in our case, you know, the peanut butter comes free because it's donated by the care center. So so that seems to be working. That's just something I did recently in the last week or two. My findings are that that in terms of the first thing that I was looking at, the average time for seeds to sprout, it ended up being 5 days for Seminole pumpkins and 9 days for Calabaza. The Calabaza seeds did have to be reseeded 4 times, so it seems that they were less viable, and I'm not sure if that's because they had mold on them or that's just how they are. So the one plant that has promising fruit on it is a Seminole pumpkin, so that's the one I just pointed out to you here. Most of the pumpkins in Tier 1 have long vines, as you see, compared to the one in Tier 2. The Tier 2 had more growth at first, and I think that's because of the sun in the other area. But it also could be due to the roots are restricted to the containers. So in terms of application and community development, when the pumpkins are grown in a community garden, things that may not be applicable are using the pig bedding, compost, the fish carcass, and the fish water. Because if a person doesn't have access to these things, then they may need to purchase something, and like I said, they may not have the money to purchase it, so then they may need to come up with other ways of dealing with that. So maybe they can make their own food, they can make compost out of food scraps using the bokashi method, which I did not have a chance to try that out, but that's something I do want to experiment with in the future. And then as for the fish carcass, you know, they could go fishing and catch their own fish for free at you know, some pond, river, or ocean nearby. But if they don't know how to fish, then maybe they can go to a seafood market where they may be disposing of fish anyway. And as for the fish water, if they don't have a fish tank or know someone that does, then they would have to resort to buying fertilizer with potassium. If they have an issue with flowers. As for cultural and spiritual implications, there may be some people who do not like the taste of pumpkin or do not like to eat vegetables much because they were brought up in a meat and potatoes culture. Some people may not enjoy tending to the pumpkins on a regular basis and deal with troubleshooting when there's issues, and just want to eat food that is quick and easy to eat. Those people who are open to growing pumpkins and reaping the harvest may find peace in the process when someone works alongside them and mentions stories from the Bible that relate to gardening and prays for them and with them without making them feel judged. So in summary, so the rest of the factors that I listed that have not been completed yet, I want to continue with this pumpkin trial so that I can fully research those things until the first frost, because that's when the plants will stop fruiting. The findings I will continue to document them in the journal and then update this report to share with future pumpkin growers. So, are there any questions?
Question for Candace.
How long did it take to grow the little pumpkin? Not the one.
To grow. Oh, that. Well, this one, I forgot to mention. This actually came not from my plants, but there was a wild one that was left over from before. So when Amin actually was clearing out this with all the weeds, I saw a vine, a pumpkin vine that looked like this, and I tried to keep it going, but the vine was very weak and it ended up snapping. But it still remained. So I have no idea how long it took to get to this size.
Is that a Seminole?
To answer your question.
That one is not a Seminole. That is a Trinidad.
Oh, okay.
That was from my last planting.
Oh, okay. Any other questions?
About the size of the pumpkin, is that the final size or they can be bigger?
They can range anywhere from, they say 6 pounds to 12 pounds, but I found some people that even cited smaller ones. Well, it depends on if you're going to eat them green or not. So if you let them fully mature, you have enough time before the first frost, then 6 pounds would be the smallest. And so that's going to be like about this big. Yeah.
There's a Seminole pumpkin in the community garden right now.
What's that?
There's a Seminole pumpkin in the community garden if you want to
Oh,
look at it at some point. Yeah.
Make it as big as it was. Any other questions? What did you learn the most?
I learned that if you're going to do pumpkins, then you need to start earlier in the year. So that way you don't have to worry about the frost and the sunlight. So definitely, if I had known I was going to do that at the very beginning, then yeah, I definitely would have started earlier. But like I said, I wasn't sure what my project was going to be. And then figuring out all the logistics of it, you know, where to do it and all that. I wish that could have been fleshed out quicker, so that way I could have gotten it, planted sooner. Because I really wanted it to get to the point where I could cook them, and then I wanted to have samples for all of you, so you could taste the difference and you could see, you know, because in terms of taste, like it's supposed to taste like a butternut squash, and also eating it green is something that's not very common. I just saw a few people actually have recipes doing it with a green one, so I really wanted to have that. But the other thing I realized is that so it took a while for the leaves to grow, so then I wasn't really checking them, but then once it started growing, then it was like massive, and I should have started, you know, checking under the leaves to see, you know, the ants and the caterpillars, and then maybe it wouldn't have been as I could have mitigated it sooner, so that way it wouldn't cause so much damage, because I think that's also hindering the fruit because it doesn't have as much energy being absorbed by the leaves. So, it would definitely be something that I would have to be more diligent about checking it. So not just allowing time for watering, but allowing time for pest control. Because from the research I read, they said, that they thrive on neglect. So I'm thinking, I don't have to spend that much time tending to them. Because they said that they usually, back when the Seminole Indians, because they're named after the Seminole Indians, because they would grow them near a dead tree, and then they would climb up the dead tree But this is in the Everglades usually, so conditions are, I guess, different. They've got more water, and the pests are probably different. So they didn't tend to them. They just kind of just grew wild, and then they would harvest them. So yeah, I think the first time someone grows them, then they really need to monitor it more to understand how much time it takes. So I think that's